The new generation of anime is here. Oh, okay, we're already messing up.
It or not, the anime and manga world is in about as weird as a spot as it's been in the last decade, with MHA's manga now over and the only piece of remaining ongoing MHA content being Vigilantes, which isn't done by Horikoshi, and would
see, that was weird because I seen that in Barnes and Noble, and I was like, I didn't even know this existed, but apparently it's not even by
JJK, Black Clover, and possibly Chainsaw Man, all also approaching their ends. 4 out of the top 10 most popular manga on Earth are coming to a close, and roughly around the same time. Now, that doesn't mean that these IP are about to disappear tomorrow. MHA, after the conclusion of this season, will have an entire another season to adapt. Chainsaw Man is just now getting to the Reze arc. They're not even done with part 1, and JJK is just now hitting the Culling games, and season 3 won't be out for a couple of months. And if Black Clover's anime ever does return, they haven't even adapted the Dark...
Dude, they need to return, bro. The manga is so fucking good, bro. There's so much things I want to see animated.
Riot arc yet, and thus while the manga world is somewhat spiraling down into chaos,
so many things.
Manga IP on Earth are about to disappear in the next year. The anime world doesn't necessarily have as big of a problem, especially with the release of incredibly popular anime like Kaiju number 8, which are also in a weird spot manga-wise because Kaiju number 8 might also be coming to a close somewhat soon. And while I do believe that to be slightly unlikely, they are battling against the final boss of the manga that we've seen up until this point. And while obviously new bosses can always be introduced, and the editors of Kaiju number 8 are going to want that kind of thing to happen to keep the manga running for as long as possible, I can't confirm nor deny whether or not that manga is going to be coming to an end soon. And thus it feels as though we're currently heading towards a situation, with manga at least, that we haven't seen happen to the likes of places like Shonen Jump since the end of Dragon Ball. See, while I and the majority of you watching this video were much too young to remember this period of manga,
I wasn't old enough, bro.
In the early 90s, when manga like Dragon Ball and Slam Dunk ended simultaneously, the manga world was thrust into what's considered a dark period, an era that existed between the prolific success of Dragon Ball and the beginning of the Big Three. And in these 6 or 7 years, while a couple of incredible manga did continue their run or just begin in the first place, nothing was able to reach the heights of Dragon Ball, One Piece, Bleach, or Naruto. And now with Naruto and Bleach out of the equation, kind of, obviously Boruto's one of the
kind of. Boruto's peak right now in the manga, bro. That's what people don't understand, bro. Like, the anime, whatever, it's kind of, it's whatever. But Boruto, manga-wise right now, peak, bro.
most important and biggest manga on Earth, and with JJK, MHA, AOT, and One Piece either approaching their ends or already over, it feels as though to a lot of manga readers that we're starting to head towards another one of those dark periods. That once these big name IP do finally finish their run, that we're going to be left with nothing substantial to read. And so I would love to sit here and tell you that no, there's no way we're not hurtling towards that reality. Unfortunately, there is some truth in that sentiment. That is
Nah, there's a lot of good anime. There's, well, I won't say anime. There's some good anime, because you're talking, well, there's some good anime that we're still waiting on, but manga, there's Kagurabachi, there's, fuck, that other one. I can't even remember now. Nah, whatever, I'll just shut the fuck up.
Isn't to say that there's not hope on the horizon. Because
is that one with the girl with the rose coming out of her face?
That one? I
like that one.
The manga that I believe will replace the MHAs, Chainsaw Mans, and JJKs
in
the world.
100%.
Stories that have existed in the shadows of the manga that have already gotten anime adaptations. Stories that once they do actually get anime adaptations should become some of the largest manga on the planet. And how those specific stories with their specific themes and details will fill the voids that we feel from other stories that we love. So with no further ado, let's get into the next biggest anime explained.
I'm looking for the next big three.
Guys, please, for me, like this video,
there'll never be another big three,
and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see me try to bring real life challenges to the anime world, go ahead and follow my brand new channel that I created with Stephen He, Chris Barnett, and Danny Mata called Anime IRL. We just released our most expensive and most impressive video we've ever done, Weebs.
I might watch these.
Really, go check it out. It's very good. Or if you just want to hear me talk about anime and manga, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything
Otaku's Anonymous.
This week, it's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, the world is changing. And that's scary. Some of the manga and anime IP that we love aren't going anywhere anytime soon, like Boruto and possibly Chainsaw Man and possibly Kaiju number 8. Two titans of industry like JJK and MHA coming to a close at the same time is hard to ignore. Tie that into the fact that one of the biggest anime of all
Demon
time,
Slayer,
Demon
bro.
Slayer, is now heading into its final arc, and the fact that we just lost Attack on Titan less than a year ago, and
dude,
anime and
don't
manga
remind
fans
me.
all across the world are starting to get the itch. So how are we going to replace these absolute titans of industry? Well, fortunately, there's 3.5 manga that are storming up the rankings. 3 of which that have already been guaranteed anime releases, and a 4th of which that will almost definitely receive.
Dude, I just can't emphasize enough. Kagurabachi is peak, bro. Like, it's gonna be great.
Receive an anime adaptation in the near future. But what are these 3.5 or 4 manga, and what will they replace? Well, let's get into it. Let's first start with the half that we were talking about. The half, as I quantify it, is Kaiju number 8. See, Kaiju number 8, as it currently stands, is the 6th most popular manga on Earth. And
I like it, but I'm kind of
reads from Shueisha, and that's actually
with the
really
anime,
impressive when you consider the fact that Kaiju number 8 hasn't released a new chapter since July 18th, and thus Kaiju number 8 still holding on to those kind of numbers when the manga above it and the manga below it have released since then is very impressive. However, Kaiju number 8 wasn't always a top 10 in popularity manga. In fact, Kaiju number 8 usually trended prior to the release of its anime in the area of the 11th or 12th most popular manga on Earth. Below things like Black Clover, Oshinoko, and Spy Family, all things it now exists above. And that's because Kaiju number 8's anime release was one of the most positively received anime adaptations I've seen
I definitely liked it.
See,
I definitely liked it.
Nobody likes how little detail they put into everybody's faces and how round they made everyone's faces.
And
also how skinny they made Kaiju Kafka. The action and the humor of Kaiju number 8 played perfectly to an anime adaptation. Not only did we get to see a bunch of incredible fights like Hoshina versus Kaiju number 10 and Kafka versus Isayao, but the humor of the manga, when given sound effects and good voice acting, played really well. Tie that into the fact that Kaiju number 8 did something that is incredibly rare in the anime world and decided to release their sub and dub simultaneously. Kaiju number 8 was immediately accessible to both sides of anime fandom, whether you're a dub or a sub loyalist. But why do I quantify Kaiju number 8 as a half in the equation of anime and manga that will take over the world in the next couple of years? Well, because Kaiju number 8's already got a first season anime adaptation. You knew about Kaiju number 8, we've talked about it on this page. It was the anime sensation of the last season. However, that doesn't mean that Kaiju number 8 isn't without its problems. See, Kaiju number 8's first season adapted roughly the first 30 or 40 chapters of the manga. And while that's pretty standard pacing, unfortunately, with the way the anime schedules work nowadays, Kaiju number 8 might run into some serious problems here pretty soon. See, Kaiju number 8 as it currently stands is only 111 chapters long. And if we were to apply the anime scheduling of really any of the top anime we're talking about replacing, like JJK or MHA or even Chainsaw Man, a lot of anime studios are now pushing out to get at least 12 episodes out every year, with MHA and Bones endeavoring to do even more than that. But if we're consuming roughly 40 chapters for every 12 episodes of content we're getting from Kaiju number 8,
we're running out, brother.
That means that Kaiju number 8, if it does truly
we're falling off the road,
9, will only be roughly 40 episodes long. And thus, if another villain isn't introduced in Kaiju number 8, which I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't, on account of the fact that the manga is currently hurtling towards Kafka.
Pull a Shippuden, bro. Pull a Shippuden. There you go. Then you got a whole nother series, bro.
Achieving everything he's ever wanted to achieve. That means that Kaiju number 8's manga and anime are also something that we need to consider in terms of replacement. And crazily enough, as wild as it sounds, because Kaiju number 8 was effectively the thing keeping the One Punch Man size hole in our heart filled, but if Kaiju number 8 continues on this trajectory, then One Punch Man might actually exist longer than it. And not for any good reasons. One Punch Man hasn't released a new chapter since February 28th, and these inconsistencies in One Punch Man's release schedule is why the anime release schedule has been so stunted, as One Punch Man also only has about 120 chapters to adapt, as their anime leaves off in chapter 84.
I gotta watch more, bro.
But considering the fact that 120 chapters to adapt is more than the entirety of Kaiju number 8, and the One Punch Man manga doesn't appear to be hurtling towards its inevitable demise or ending, then the manga and anime that should have effectively replaced One Punch Man, as it should have ended years ago, might actually be replaced by the stunted release schedule of One Punch Man. But why am I talking about these two like they're tied together at the waist? Well, that's because fundamentally the stories are very similar, and they fill a similar niche in the anime and manga world. They're both essentially kaiju busting anime with a broken MC and a cast of characters around that broken MC who make the broken MC seem more interesting. As people like Mina, Hoshina, Gen, Ichikawa, and Kikuru and Kaiju number 8 do a lot of the emotional heavy lifting, while Kafka is used for hype and comedy, which is a very similar situation to Saitama in his own story. and thus the existence of a comedic kaiju buster has always kind of been a staple in the manga world. At least it has been for the last decade or so. But enough about the halves, let's move on to the actual manga that I believe will take over the spot of all the industry titans that are slowly fading into oblivion. And before we get to talking about the two manga that have already had their anime announced and leaked, let's talk about the anime that I believe will almost definitely get an anime announcement soon, but it's just too early in its run to get that kind of announcement right now. And that would be a manga that we've already talked about on this channel rather extensively, Kagurabachi. You guys remember Kagurabachi, right?
It's just so good.
The manga that when it released, everyone said enough time has passed, Kagurabachi's stronger and better than Luffy. The manga that went so incredibly viral for basically no reason at all. The manga...
It's just cool looking, bro. That's why it went viral immediately. Dude, you ever... Oh, you guys haven't seen what it looks like when, like... Because there's been certain shit that has been, like, fan animated and whatnot. It's just, dude... It's gonna be so good.
That went so viral, people were getting tattoos of the first couple of panels because that's all we had. The manga that went so incredibly viral that its first chapter got more weekly reads than One Piece and JJK. The manga that went so incredibly viral and you haven't really thought about it in the last year. Because yes, that massive hit of virality to skyrocket Kagurabachi's virality happened almost a year ago. The first chapter of Kagurabachi came out September 23rd, 2023. And since that moment, and as of the taping of this video, 44 chapters of Kagurabachi have dropped. And while Kagurabachi no longer trends amongst the top 3 most popular manga on Earth, for the last year it has held a consistent placing in the top 10. And that's because it's good. Now, is it transcendently good like JJK? Is it gonna bring normies into the weebdom like AOT? Now, probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, probably not.
Maybe. See, Kagurabachi is the epitome of putting the fun back in fundamentals.
I love it.
It is the most prototypical manga story you've ever seen in your entire life. In fact, the story of Kagurabachi is so incredibly prototypical that the manga that's currently being adapted in the 2.5D play in Oshinoko-ko's newest season of anime, Tokyo Blade, is basically a one-to-one retelling of Kagurabachi. And Tokyo Blade is supposed to be one of the more prototypical manga ideas we've ever seen. Because the idea, especially in Japan, of a war scattering a bunch of legendary katanas and then one person stumbling upon one of the katanas and then using the strength of that katana to gather all the other katanas is not only the plot of Tokyo Blade and Kagurabachi, but is also an important subplot in Tower of God. Because here's the thing, stories like this have existed in Japan for as long as Japanese storytelling has existed. And thus how and why is Kagurabachi so successful? Is it just wrong?
Did I mention I got to watch an episode of Tower of God before it premiered anywhere else at Anime New York City?
Riding off the virality of the memes that happened a year ago? Well, maybe. In fact, that can't be ignored because the virality of all those memes did make hundreds of thousands of people go to read Kagurabachi. And of those hundreds of thousands of people, if even 1 in 10 people decided to keep up with the manga, that was going to lead to a massively successful
one of the 10.
And therefore, while the virality of the early chapters of Kagurabachi cannot be ignored when trying to calculate why it's so popular, in actuality,
I really didn't get into it because of the memes, bro. I got into it because I bought Shonen Jump on my iPhone, and I didn't... I need my money's worth, the fuck? And that was up there. And I said, shit.
The reason Kagurabachi is as popular as it is because it's good. It's well drawn. The powers of the universe are really cool. There's really cool sub-factions of good guys and bad guys. The humor is genuine. The action is compelling. And Chihiro is a really good MC. And thus, for all intents and purposes, Kagurabachi is basically just Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer is also an incredibly formulaic story. But Demon Slayer proved to the entire anime and manga worlds that formulaic isn't bad if the formula is followed well. Sometimes you don't need a JJK level power system or an AOT level political scheme to make an IP good. Sometimes you just need a boy collecting some blades and cutting down bad guys, and that's what...
The thing is, people want to, like... This has been the same thing with video games lately, okay? And Warhammer is a good example of that, and some other games where they try to do too much. They try to put their own ideologies into it and their own political views and this and that, and they always want to like break out and do some shit that nobody's ever thought of, or like, bro. And at the end of the day, bro, we just want a fun ass anime. We just want a fun ass game of, you know, guys being dudes, fucking shit up. Your basic simple story, you know, your simple shit, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes that's just what we want. We just want the simple shit. We want the boy with the demon inside of him. You know what I'm saying? who's, you know, trying to find his place in the world while fighting and conquering his inner demons, bro. That's what we want. We want, you know, a guy struggling with the past of his father and, you know, fucking up dudes with swords, bro. That's what we want, bro. We just want motherfuckers killing motherfuckers. That's, you know, at the end of the day, bro, it ain't always got to be this complex thing, you know? Sometimes we just want some badass shit happening. Simple. Simple. Sometimes we just want to go back to the roots. You know what I'm saying?
What Demon Slayer is, and that's what Kagurabachi is. And thus, for the last year or so, Kagurabachi has been filling the Demon Slayer-sized hole in my heart because Demon Slayer's manga's been over for years now. On top of this, when you consider the fact that Kagurabachi is only 44 chapters into its run, and based off the current pacing of Kagurabachi, it should be several hundred chapters long, then Kagurabachi should be filling that Demon Slayer-sized hole in my heart for a long time. But when you tie that into the fact that Kagurabachi probably won't get an anime adaptation until it's at least 100 chapters into its story, then that means we probably won't be looking at the release of a Kagurabachi anime for at least another year or two.
Sadly.
Which would mean that Kagurabachi's anime release would coincide pretty well with the release of the Demon Slayer movies. And thus Kagurabachi would almost perfectly pick up the baton from Demon Slayer.
Ooh, that would be good. That would be good.
To nail the mainstream hype as well as Demon Slayer is yet to be seen. And there's a better
I think it
likelihood
could.
than not that it won't. Not because
I don't know, actually, because Demon Slayer, another thing is the characters, you know what I'm saying? Everybody feels like they have a character that they relate to. Whether you're, you know, a boy or a girl, you know? You feel like you have a character, or, you know, depending on what your personality is, you feel like you have a character that you relate to. With Kagurabachi, it's more so just badass MC, killing motherfuckers with swords, and struggling with some things. And I think that's a character that everybody can get behind, but maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe they all can't personally relate to it. But I find it awesome.
Kagurabachi isn't as good as Demon Slayer, but because Demon Slayer just blew up. And while you could say the same thing about Kagurabachi's beginnings, to blow
Demon Slayer also blew up because of the animation, dude. Like, the animation, a lot of people, I don't necessarily agree with this take, but a lot of people say that the animation carries Demon Slayer. And a little bit it does. A little bit it does. It definitely helps. If it had shit animation, people wouldn't be watching it as much. But, dude, it's so beautiful. So beautiful. And that's, I think, another reason why it's easy to get a lot of the normies in. It's just better, you know?
Up to the size
Animation
of Demon Slayer
great.
is almost impossible, but it does allow me to sleep at night to know that Demon Slayer will have some form of a replacement. But we've talked enough about Kagurabachi on this page. Let's move on to our next manga. And this is a manga that's been in the news for the last couple of days. It is actually the reason why I'm making this video today. Because the next manga we're going to talk about is Dandadan, which I always want to call Dandadan. Now this manga, which has been trending in the 11th to 15th most popular manga for the last year or two, obviously got its anime announced a couple of months ago. And the news of the anime adaptation has been dominating the news cycle for the last couple of days, because not only was the first episode of Dandadan shown at Anime Expo and therefore leaked, yeah, they say you can't have your camera out, but they also can't police like 3,000 people.
They tried to do this at Anime New York City when we were watching, oh, I can't remember the name of it, dude. It was like some weird isekai. I don't even remember the name of it. And Tower of God Season 2. Yeah, they were like, guys, no photos, no this, no that. It's like, bro, I recorded a video. I didn't record, I just recorded a quick, Snapchat story, you know what I'm saying? But
studios know this. It's not the end of the world if the first episode they show at a convention leaks. However, that's not where the leaks stopped. Because Dandadan's first season, or more specifically, its first 6 episodes, were caught in one of the biggest anime leak sessions we've ever seen in our entire lives. And all of this came from Netflix. See, in a classic story of sometimes procrastination is the best way to approach your homework, Dandadan, which appears to be massively ahead of schedule, at least comparatively to some of the other anime projects we've seen come out in the last years, has a number number of its episodes already completed. Now, we can either chalk this up to Science Saru, the people who are animating this season of Dandadan, being a competent company filled with animators who possibly enjoy their jobs, or we can mark it up to the fact that Science Saru doesn't have a ton of other projects it's working on. Regardless, Science Saru, unlike Mappa, who was completing episodes of season 2 of JJK hours before their release, had so many episodes of Dandadan's new season that's coming out in October done that the leaker was able to leak half of the season. And that's just crazy. What some reports are saying, as other reports are saying that the entirety of the first season of Dandadan has been leaked. And that claim isn't the craziest thing of all time when you consider the fact that ReZero's entire third season was leaked, the entirety of the Terminator anime was leaked, Ranma 1/2 was leaked, and Mononoke the movie was leaked. And this is not only one of the biggest anime leaks we've ever seen, but one of the biggest information leaks we've ever seen. A leak like this could lose Netflix and animation companies millions of dollars. See, because while I haven't gone out and scoured the internet for these leaks, because I want to support the animation companies that made these projects and make sure that they're getting paid adequate wages for the work that they've done, there's absolutely people out there who heard, oh my god, I get to see Dandadan a couple of months early? Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that right now. And thus, unfortunately, for projects like Dandadan, the Terminator anime, Ranma 1/2, and Mononoke the movie, hype surrounding their official releases will be inherently lessened. And that could be really I feel like I haven't heard of that. See, initially, this is all I wanted to talk about today, but then I realized it probably wasn't enough content to make an entire video. But the reality of Dandadan's first 6 episodes leaking could be potentially fatal to the continuation of this series. See, like I said, while the majority of people who are excited about Dandadan are waiting for its official release, that doesn't mean everybody is. And thus, since the first 6 episodes will have existed on the internet for several months by the time that the first episode is officially released, the hype generated around the first 6 episodes and the amount of people who watch them will be significantly lessened. Which means the viewership numbers, the Blu-ray sales, and just the general metrics for Dandadan will be lower. It'll be stunted, And since the anime world is so incredibly cutthroat, there's a solid possibility that this dip in the viewership of the first 6 episodes of the Dandadan could be a fatal blow to its ability to get a second season. Though, I don't believe that's likely. See, because the anime and manga world has decided to do a full 360. Anime and manga in the early 2000s, in the late 90s, was weird. Like, really weird.
I don't know, I wasn't around,
like
bro.
Space Dandy, Gintama, and Bobo dominated in anime cycles. And while none of these shows were ever the most popular anime that were out and running, while they were running, these were still mangas that got the majority or the entirety of their stories adapted in the form of anime. However, after the conclusion of these stories, we decided to enter a cycle of hyper-serious manga, as manga like Attack on Titan decided to take over the entire anime world. However, we're now once again beginning to turn back towards being silly, goofy guys. And I genuinely believe the reason we
who doesn't love being silly, goofy guys? That's what I'm saying, bro.
And Chainsaw Man.
Guys being dudes.
Funny, goofy, unserious, but incredibly cool time. There's really no better manga than Dandadan, which mixes the occult aspects and incredible action and art of JJK and the full-on fervent fever dream ridiculousness of Chainsaw Man. It's a young love story about 2 kids trying to find ghosts and aliens, and they stumble upon turbo grannies and we'll call them robotic banana monsters. It is an uproariously fun read, and if there's one manga that I genuinely believe could replace the top dogs in entertainment right now, it would be Dandadan. It has the ridiculousness, action, and gore that appeals to American
I think it could
audience,
definitely.
Like Chainsaw Man, and a fair
I think
amount
it
of
can
tropes
definitely
that appeal
compete.
to a Japanese audience.
I don't know
I
if
see
it's
no reason that
replacing,
after its official release,
but it can
that
compete.
Dandadan shouldn't exist as a manga in the top 3 spot, especially after seeing a couple of the snippets that I've seen from the leaks. The animation looks gorgeous, and thus, while I don't believe Dandadan will reach a mainstream audience, I believe like Chainsaw Man or JJK will dominate inside of weeb circles, though the possibility of its entire first season leaking does make me very nervous. And if that leads to it stumbling out of the gate in terms of metrics, watch times, and sales, unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. But I guess we'll have to wait and see until October, which is ironically around when the Chainsaw Man Reze movie is releasing. And thus, much in the same way that I believe that there was a baton pass between Naruto and MHA, yes, the stories are similar, and yes, there's a fair amount of overlap in the fan bases, that Dandadan could potentially see a baton pass from either JJK or Chainsaw Man, because as like we said, it's kind of like a baby.
I feel like it's more likely going to be
Now, I say
Chainsaw
this
Man.
because JJK's anime is still probably about 4-ish years from being completed. And if part 2 of Chainsaw Man Man is going to be the final part of Chainsaw Man, as I believe it's going to be, then Chainsaw Man's anime probably also only has about 4 years. And considering the fact that MHA's anime released in somewhere around 2013 and Naruto's anime ended in 2017, this would be a similar overlap to MHA and Naruto. And thus I believe that Dandadan could vault itself to a level of popularity that we saw with early MHA, as it won't necessarily have to stand on its own for the first couple of years of its anime release, and it'll have a built-in fan base by the time that the two stories that it's like, Chainsaw Man and JJK, come to their closes. However, that doesn't mean that all the up-and-coming manga of the next generation.
I wonder if they coordinate this shit. I wonder, like, if the studios be kind of coordinating shit with, like, oh, this series is gonna end, but we know the fans of this series kind of mix in, and this is a similar anime, so we can kind of start off with a couple episodes, feed them in. As soon as this one ends, we feed them into this one, and then kind of so on and forth. I feel like it makes sense.
Have a direct correlation or comparison to a manga or anime that we love that's huge right now. And I say that because the fourth
Sakamoto Days
talk about is Sakamoto Days.
Yep.
See, Sakamoto Days,
dude, their booth at Anime New York City was so cool.
Has been running since 2020 and has been massively popular since it began. A story about a legendary hitman who quit being a hitman because he married a woman and started a convenience store and got chubby. It's an action-packed comedy manga that really has no direct comparison to anything else. Yep. And while it is absolutely a comedy manga, it does feature some of the greatest action I've seen in manga, period. And thus it's hard to not compare it to One Punch Man because it focuses around an incredibly broken MC and a comedy action manga, but it's nothing like One Punch Man. And then you're like, oh, well, if it's about assassins, is it anything like Spy Family? And like, kind of. Well, large aspects of the story revolve around Sakamoto and his family. The story more revolves around the League of Assassins that Sakamoto once belonged to. And thus, honestly, I really have no direct manga to compare it to. And this is why I'm actually kind of reticent on its anime adaptation success. See, fortunately for Sakamoto Days, it's not coming out until January 2025, but it is coming out on Netflix, so it could have been in the leaks if they had any of their episodes done, which apparently they don't. See, because when it comes down to it, the closest comparison I can find for Sakamoto Days is probably Kaiju number 8, a story about 3-ish protagonists, one of whom is a legendary overpowered assassin, one of whom is an up-and-coming assassin who bumps into him in chapter 1, and then one of whom is a girl who uses her hand-to-hand
similarities
weapons to dominate fights. And thus I don't know how much space we have in the future of anime for comedy anime. Dandadan is inherently comedic, Kaiju number 8 is very funny, Mashle is already on its 2nd season and one of the more popular anime out right now, and that's why
maybe I should give Mashle a second chance, bro. I've been thinking about it. I think I might have to give it a second chance. I'm seeing a lot of people liking it, but I don't know. First couple episodes didn't really get me, but maybe I just gotta give it another chance.
I do believe the pendulum is shifting back to anime being silly and goofy. I don't know if the anime world is going to be able to sustain 4 comedy anime at the top of their power, especially when you consider the fact that One Punch Man Season 3, which already has a built-in massive fan base, is...
Bro, if we could get... Well, thing is, too, we might be getting Fire Force animated, so that's a little bit of comedy, but it's definitely more shonen. Well, you know what I mean? It's definitely more like action oriented with bits of comedy and, you know, kind of fan service and shit. But if we get that, we'll get back to more of our traditional shonen, and then we get Black Clover, hopefully, praying. That helps a bit, and then we're gonna need a new. I don't want to say like Naruto, but we're gonna need like a new like Naruto / My Hero / like we're gonna need a new like shonen, bro. Like the staple. We're gonna need a new one. And I don't know where we're getting it.
Also coming
other than Kagurabachi, but like Kagurabachi is also kind of I don't want to make Vagabond or Vinland Saga comparisons because it's not exactly the same, but it shares some themes with like seinen kind of
back.
I don't know.
And thus when it comes down to the success of the 4 manga we've talked about today, I have the least faith in Sakamoto Days, even though I love the story.
I'm kind of retarded.
I just feel like nowadays you need a thing. Kaiju number 8's thing is that it was the first of this newest generation to come out. Kagurabachi was memed into oblivion until it eventually became one of the most popular manga on earth. Danzidan is eccentric, colorful, beautiful, and hilarious. And while Sakamoto Days also fills a lot of those same categorizations, unfortunately, it's going to be the last out of all of these things outside of Kagurabachi to come out. But that doesn't mean I'm rooting against it. In fact, I'm rooting for it. The more good anime, the better for me. But that isn't actually all the manga I want to talk about today. See, because those 4 manga you probably knew about. You're a well-seasoned weeb, and a lot of those manga have either gotten their anime adaptation already or just about to. And while I do genuinely believe that out of all those manga I just listed, Danzidan has the highest level of potential, I actually believe there's another story. A story that's going to be animated by Bones and come out in 2025 that has a higher level of potential than Danzidan. And that story would be none other than Gachi Yakuta. See, Gachi Yakuta is tough to write in terms of manga popularity because it's not serialized on
looks badass
Shueisha or Shonen Jump. In fact, ironically, the easiest way to read Gachi Yakuta is illegally, as pretty much the only way to get Gachi Yakuta, at least in America, is to buy the physical volume.
Is it Korean?
Because for some reason getting our hands on the manga is so incredibly difficult. Unfortunately, this manga isn't as popular as it should be. However,
manga.
I believe this manga is the most unique manga I've read since Sabuki Bisco, which actually isn't a manga, it's a light novel. It's a story that can best be surmised in 2 words. Trash Punk, a story where the power system revolves around people pouring their love into items they've had their entire lives. And thus by pouring love into items and taking care of the items that they've had their entire lives, they're able to imbue those items with powers. And in a world dedicated to throwing away the things that no longer suit them, people with this level of dedication to these individual items are very rare. The art style, action, and world building of this manga is almost second to none. I genuinely believe with every inch of my being that it is better than the other 4 manga I just told you about.
Now I'm gonna have to give this a look.
Next to no faith in Bones after what they've done to MHA, Bones has shown us time and time again, whenever they want to care about something, they do a pretty good job. And that's why I believe of the 5 manga we've talked about today, this one has the least amount of hype, and therefore its anime has the least amount of hype. I believe out of all of the manga that I listed, outside of maybe Danzidan,
I've never even heard of it.
Gachi Yakuta will do the best, and it will carry us forth into this new generation of manga. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What do you guys think is on the horizon for the next new gen of anime and manga? Do you believe that we're going to see more stories coming from places that aren't Japan, like Tower of God or Solo Leveling? Or do you believe that Japan still holds its singular monopoly on the greatest manga of all time? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that bell. And oh yeah, One Piece will be running until I'm 50.
True. One Piece will outlive us all.